Do you guys hear that? Sounds like parakeets. Sorry. Guys, welcome to Project Geekology. I didn't know how to start this episode, but there are definitely parakeets in the topic of discussion today. We're going to be talking all about Hayao Miyazaki's latest film, The Boy and the Heron, which has... I don't even know how to describe it, but we're going to figure out a way to do so throughout the course of the next hour or so. This is Rich's first Miyazaki film, so this should be a fascinating, I guess, introspective on, discovering Miyazaki in his late years of filmmaking. But yeah, this will be fun. This is episode 109. Thank you guys for tuning in to Project Geekology. My name is Dakota. I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined as always with
Anthony, and joining us for a good little while now is
Rich. Happy to be with you guys. It's been a little bit. I'm happy to get the band back together today.
Yeah, I do apologize that we have been absent for the past couple weeks. I've been in the process of a big move. I've been talking about, building a home for probably a couple months at this point. And I'm finally in the place. It's not 100% finished yet. I'm living out of boxes and still working on, getting the finishing touches on some of the rooms in this place. But I'm really excited. The move itself is finished. So I am here. And no more interruptions that as far as I can tell. But so what have you guys been up to these past couple weeks? Rich, I'll start with you.
Let's see. I kind of took some time to dive into Star Wars, the High Republic books. I had, kind of a cursory. I read the first one, the Light of the Jedi, and I kind of just stalled out for a while. So I dove back into, can't remember the name of it. I know it's the one before Into the Dark.
The Rising Storm.
Yeah, the Rising Storm. So just kind of catching up with that. I'm kind of in a weird holding pattern because there aren't any games I really am looking forward to. I did have a mini freak out because PlayStation Network went down for about 20 hours.
Yeah, what was up with that?
And a lot of my games are digital. I hate saying that out loud. And none of the games that I wanted to play in that moment, I hadn't done the licensed renewal that allows you to play the games when you're offline. So I was kind of just stuck. So I started reading. And
wow,
I almost sound like one of my students. The lights went out, so I guess I had to read. But
oh man, that's rough.
Rich can play his Fortnite.
Yeah,
I kind of wish that. I mean, I'm pretty sure that they do in some way, but with the Switch, you could have digital games, but as long as that Switch is your main Switch, you can play it online or offline. And unless it's one of those games that you have to stream to the device, or if it's a live service game that is online all the time.
Well, you could do that with
but it
PlayStation,
makes you.
But you just have to. You have to go into settings, then you have to go into other, and then under that there's a box that you have to check that then allows that to happen. So, unless you were prepared for this to happen, right? There's no reason for you to think naturally that it would be an issue.
Yeah. Well, you know what my issue is with the whole PlayStation thing going down for 20 hours or so, which is essentially an entire day.
Yeah.
It just kind of goes to show how much you really own the games you buy digitally. And, if anything happens to the network, or there is any sort of hack, or the system goes down like it did, do you really still own that? You can't access it. Even though you have the PlayStation, you have the controller, you have the TV, whatever. I think that's an interesting topic of discussion, because I think in today's day and age where everything is streamable, is it it's at your fingertips until it isn't. You can lose the Max or Disney Plus or Netflix can lose the rights to a certain title, and you could just never see it again. It's not yours. So yeah, it's just something I think about regularly.
I do.
Well, I mean that is an active debate though. That you know, I mean, there's a lot of pros with having, you know, the
A digital library,
games.
yeah.
Exactly, you know, because it's convenient. It's also, you know, you don't have to deal with you know, having too many games can be kind of cumbersome. But also, when you own a physical game, that game is yours. Revoke, they can't take that game away from you unless they come into your house, you know?
Right,
And
unless you stole
that's
it from GameStop and they have proof and the police raid your apartment. Yeah, that's not going to
yeah,
happen.
exactly. But to be honest, a lot of these places, and it's like hidden in their terms, they have every right. And it sucks, but they can revoke your the license status. Like, you could buy the game, but if you own it digitally, they can take it away if they wanted to.
100%.
They really could.
Yeah, no, I've definitely heard that happening before.
EA actually has done something where basically, even if you bought it digitally, right? If it's an older edition, you have no access to it. You have to have the disc. You can't get it at all. So if you're like, hey, I'd rather buy Madden, I'm looking at 21 right now. I'd rather buy Madden 21. I bought it for my son because I just wanted him to get the basics of the game down, and he didn't need to get the new version. I ended up having to buy it a physical version online because they do not allow you to pay $10 for the game that's 3 years out of date, which I think is
it's crazy.
It's the most offensive, I think, of all the things, is to erase the games and make believe they don't exist anymore because you don't want people to save a couple bucks and buy an older edition.
Yeah. I hear that.
Yeah.
Now I wonder,
definitely
Rich,
a debate.
I wonder if you had bought Madden 21 digitally, and like back in the day.
Oh, I had them. I actually that exactly happened.
You had them.
I had like Madden whatever. So I had a number. I used to buy Madden every year. So I had.
And you just can't play them now because they were digital?
I deleted it from my library because I deleted it from my console, but it's supposed to stay in your library, right?
Of course, yeah.
I go to my library, nothing. EA basically.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Because EA has a separate service on PlayStation Network where, let's say I have the highest level, so I get like demos for 2 hours, right? And sometimes all I want to do is play Madden for 2 hours because I immediately get sick about how bad the Jets are, and then I don't want to play it anymore. So I wanted to do that, and you actually have to pay the EA subscription on top of the top tier PlayStation subscription, which is already $150 a year or something. And I don't even get to play the 2 hours. I'd have to pay for EA to do it. So it's ridiculous.
I feel like we could make a whole show out about this, but
we could. I mean, movie streaming services are doing the same thing.
I know. It's super frustrating.
It's sickening. At this point, I think everybody just needs to go back to cable.
Yeah, man.
It feels like we're heading back that way because like all these streaming services cannot like survive on their own anymore. They're losing subscribers. Like people are losing interest, and so
they're losing interest and they're getting too expensive. A lot of people, the top tier version of Netflix, I think, is even more expensive than Max, dude.
Yeah.
And like Max is like, it has like I mean, everybody knows like HBO for them, having the prestige TV shows. So I'm like, dude, what is going on?
So a lot of these streaming services are like bundling up with other streaming services so that they can all stay afloat. And it feels like we're just going back to cable, like that. It's exactly, we're literally just going back in a circle.
We're going to have five Booms cable network. It's going to have all the streaming services.
Yep. That's what's next. You heard it here first, folks. Anthony, what have you been up to? I know you have something interesting going on.
Well, a lot of the past couple weeks have been, gaming, preparing for this episode, and also I have my first convention of the year. I told Dakota a little bit about it before recording, but yes, this weekend coming up as of recording, which is February 12th, I have a convention I'm going to. It's called Animate Miami. And I'm pretty excited, dude. You know me and conventions.
Yeah.
I put conventions next to next to Persona and Overwatch.
I love it. Actually, Rich, you also regularly attend New York Comic Con. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's actually I can say this now. It's a Laconi family holiday. We
Okay.
Since Charlie has been born, he's a December baby, but since
Okay.
after that year, he has essentially attended Comic Con every year except for when it wasn't run. Uh, and we do it as a family. We dress up together and have matching costumes. And now they've
That's
actually
awesome.
branched out. And actually, you'll like this, Anthony. They go to Anime Con up here in August, and they actually go without me now. Like they've got their big boy pants on, and
Whoa.
they don't even need the vet to lead them around.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't been, or no, did I? I did not go to New York Comic Con this past year. I went the previous year, and I've been to most of them in the past 10 years. But yeah, it's been the past couple years. It's not been like a like priority of mine, but I want to start like getting back into that. I know Anthony, you came with me to New York Comic Con at one point. So
Yes,
we
dude. I would love to.
we should do
I
it
would
again.
love to go back out there.
Yeah, we should do it
Yeah,
again.
no, absolutely. And then so we could bump into Rich and company.
Yeah, see what costume they cook up this year. Wait, so you were saying that you are going to your first convention this year. What convention?
Animate Miami.
Okay, and
And yeah, and so that one is like it's a medium-sized convention. Like it's not huge, but it's definitely not one of the smaller ones. I've been to very tiny, like, I mean, budding conventions. Like Otaku Fest is one that I go to, and I remember when they were super tiny. Now they've gotten a lot bigger. SuperCon,
that's the life.
I
It's the
remember.
life cycle of like cons. As soon as they become slightly popular, or as, like people recognize the name, it just like steamrolls and like snowballs out of proportion. But that's pretty cool. So, what is the theme of Animate Miami? Like, what is the focus?
I would say like animation. There's a lot of voice talent that are going to be out there that are from cartoons and anime. There's going to be a few Avatar: The Last Airbender voice actors. There's going to be the voice actress for Azula is going to be there.
Sick.
The current voice actor for Iroh and the voice actress for Toph is going to be there.
That's
I'm
awesome.
trying to think if there's any more, but I know that there's like a lot of other voice talent that's going to be there also, and it's just going to be a good time, dude. I always have a good time. I don't know. I love
You gotta
being
you gotta try to go to that panel.
dude. Like I am introvert 90% of the time, except for when I go to conventions. That's like when I become an extrovert.
Yeah.
Like I'll talk to everybody.
Good.
It's
Good.
it's just like whenever I'm
You're
in
in
my
your zone,
element.
bro.
Yeah, dude. It just, I mean, you know how it is. Like when you're in something and when somebody like piques your interest, they bring something up, like you become a whole other person.
Love it.
That and then also today, Overwatch dropped some like really big news. I mean, it's big for Overwatch, but they're trying to. I think that like Marvel Rivals really has them like reeling, dude. Marvel Rivals has really. There's a lot of games that have tried to replicate Overwatch, but like, dude, I mean, come on, you got the IP of Marvel,
Yeah,
and then
Marvel
they
actively swept them under. Like they just pulled the rug right out of their from underneath them.
and that's the thing that like they're trying to they're trying to they were hanging up their high
And Blizzard's
with
not used to
kings.
this. Blizzard's not used to this. Over like World of Warcraft was the biggest MMO for like 15 years, something like that. They never had a clear successor. Like it's just kind of slowly fizzled into other MMOs, and I don't even think MMOs are that popular anymore. So like there was no huge like game that took the audience away from World of Warcraft. This is new.
So WoW is still like, I would say WoW is still the top as far as MMOs, but Final Fantasy 14 is
Yeah, no,
probably their closest.
That's true. Yeah.
Is their closest, but like I feel like in a way they almost coexist. You know, like they're like, you know, you've got your thing, we've
Right.
got ours. They're very different, but like with
Rivals in
with
Overwatch. It's so
Rivals in
similar.
Overwatch, they're very, very similar. And the thing that Marvel has going for them is that they have a super stacked IP, dude. They could go as far back as they want and pull a character, you know, from the well and be like, oh my gosh, I forgot that dude existed. And then, you know, just like they have, you know, they have, you know, the cuts that we know, and then they have super deep cuts. They have so much that they could do. But the thing is that one of the biggest things that a lot of, and I know that we're talking, you know, just whatever, but one of the biggest things that a lot of Overwatch content creators have been, you know, the higher end ones, and I've been saying the same thing for a while, is that Overwatch has been focusing too much on overbalancing the game. And it's taken away a lot of the identity of these characters. Dude, you can't do that. The thing about Marvel Rivals is that, like, it's clearly like every character has something broken about them,
Yeah.
but it's not broken to the point to where it's unplayable. It's just an ace up their sleeve, that kind of thing. And the zaniness of it all makes it fun, and that's what Overwatch was at one point. But it's like, you know, at some point you had, you know, them, you know, like they're trying to balance the game so much, and then all these high tier players are whining and whispering in their ear, when at the point, like, it's like, look, we hear you, you know, we'll fine tune, but like this is the character. Unless the character is completely broken and you know, and you can't come, you know, fight against it at all, then, like, you know, you're gonna have to just make do and come up with strats, you know, that kind of thing.
So
And
hold on. What exactly did Overwatch announce?
nothing. No, I'm saying. So
You got
so
me
what
there. I
they
was just like, I thought you were just like blowing smoke. I was like, what?
was blowing smoke. So what they, so there's a couple things that they're trying to do. They're adding this whole perk system now that some other games have it, but like now throughout the matches, they're gonna have it to where like your character kind of like levels up, and like, so like the first level you get like a mini perk that like boosts a stat, and then like on like level 3 you get like a major stat boost where like one is the, like, I'm gonna say like Torbjorn. Torbjorn, one of his level 3 boosts is that he can throw his turret and it'll stick to a wall or like a ceiling. And then the other perk makes it to where he levels up to level 3, like back in the day when he had missiles shooting out of his thing.
Oh yeah.
Like
So-
they're bringing that back.
Wait, so are the perks in like mid game, or they are over time throughout the course of several matches?
I think it's like over. They didn't explain. I don't think they explained like where the perks are gonna situate as far as that. But I'm assuming that it's like probably throughout the match, or like maybe you get one perk the first round and then you get the next perk the second round. You know,
Okay.
it could be something
Yeah,
like that.
Interesting.
So yeah, they're trying to, like, I guess, kind of freshen up the gameplay. They're
I like it.
also introducing this game mode called Stadium, which they're taking a lot of elements from that PvE thing that they wanted to do, and they're adding it to this, to where, you know, there's like different tiers to the stadium, and like you can add all these like zany abilities, like Mercy giving somebody the ability for like an auto revive if they die.
You know what's
What was it?
fascinating? Overwatch 2 probably has so much scrapped content and so much scrapped gameplay styles and like story that they could, you know, fall back on. And I think this is exactly what is happening, where, you know, they had all this planned. It was probably originally going to come out at some point for the game, but they just let it fall to the wayside because they weren't really making all that much money on the game, and they decided to scrap the story mode, and they decided to scrap all these other modes, whatever. And I think, you know, Rivals is really it's given them the kick in the butt that they need to actually finish the game that they started.
Right. Well, the very reason for the game being Overwatch 2 went away.
Yeah.
It's like,
There's no
you
story
know,
mode. Okay.
there's no such thing. Overwatch 2 doesn't exist because they never made it in Overwatch 2. They just made it in Overwatch 1
Expansion.
with an expansion. That's exactly what happened, and that pissed off a lot of people. They felt betrayed by that. And so a lot of this stuff isn't things that they've been working on for like the past like year and a half or anything. This is stuff that they had in the pocket and maybe contemplated it, but I let me tell you, Rivals is a huge motivator for a lot of this stuff.
That's awesome.
I
love
it
to
is.
hear it.
You know that.
I love competition like that, though. That you
need competition. Yeah. So
that's cool.
But that's a lot of the big stuff that I've been doing and kind of looking into. What about you, Dakota? I know you've been moving and stuff. That's really like, I know that's a huge thing that you've been going on in your life. So I don't know if you've had time for anything else.
Yeah, I can't think of. I'm sure that I've done something of note, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. I guess before we talk about the film, Rich, I didn't ask, what are your thoughts on the second High Republic book, The Rising Storm? Did you get to finish it, or?
I'm not done yet. I don't. The one thing I don't like is 76 chapters is just, yeah. I don't like a high chapter count. I'd rather have like the lines that separate characters, like POV characters.
Instead of chapter breaks.
Yeah, because some of it's
like
it's like there's the attack, on whatever, there's an attack, and then you have basically different scenes from that attack unfolding, but they split it up into chapters.
Where are you in the book, like percentage wise?
The fair just started. The fair started and things have not gone well.
Have the Nihil?
Yeah, they've just shown up, so things are like going.
Yeah,
down.
I like to. I really do love The Rising Storm. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it kind of reminds me of visiting Epcot at Disney World, and there's like a terrorist attack, but like you're the guy who has to say that.
Yeah.
That's how it kind of plays out, because in Disney World, Epcot has the World Showcase, where there's like different locations around the world that like you can kind of like taste their splendors of China and Norway and Mexico, whatever. But in The Rising Storm, they have the Republic Fair on Valo, and there's like different pavilions from different worlds within the Republic to showcase like the splendor of the Republic. It's like a big propaganda thing, but whatever. And then the Nile show up, and it's just mayhem for the rest of the book. It's literally war for the rest of the book. It's nice. The best. I love it.
I actually, the only thing I think I have a problem with, and this is just personally, I think I have a, this happened to me with Game of Thrones. I have a character limit. I have a finite amount of characters that I can imagine without, and I know this is my own fault, because I know all I need to do is go to my High Republic downloaded comics, read a couple of issues, get some faces, and then it'll make everything easier.
So you know what I actually think the High Republic comics will not help you as much as you think they will, because they're not covering the same characters as the ones in the books. There are some, like they Avar Chris is in there. You might see Elzar Man occasionally, but most of the characters in the comics are doing their own thing while the events of the books are happening.
That makes sense.
No, I think
it's companion.
So I will say this about the High Republic: it's massive, it's epic, but it's probably too epic for what they were doing. Like so there's middle grade books, there's the mainline books, there's junior novels, there's manga, there's 2 different runs of comic books, and several graphic novels, and each of those things are from the first of the phases. There's 3 different phases of the High Republic, and they all follow different characters. It's massive, it's huge in scope, and I will say that it's epic, but the biggest failing of it is it's so inaccessible for people who are trying to like get the full story. You have to really devote a lot of your time and energy into like mapping this all out in your head. And I'm a timeline guy. I love that stuff. It's too much for me. I will say it's too much for me. Like, I appreciate what they did, but yeah. What I will say, download the audiobooks.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. All Star Wars audiobooks are like not
productions.
They're productions. Yeah, it's
okay.
there's like music, there's sound effects. The narrators are always fantastic in terms of like differentiating all the characters and stuff. I highly recommend the High Republic, especially on audiobook. It's fantastic. But yeah, all right. We've
It's literally like how I've gone through. Like, I mean, I haven't gone through all of them, but like the ones that I have read have been. I think every Star Wars book that I have read has been an audiobook, and they're all just like they have like the lightsaber sounds, blasters, music, dude. It's ambiance, everything. It's amazing. It really they put in a lot into those audiobooks.
yeah.
I think you've
All right,
swayed,
so
you swayed
we're-
me because the last time that I listened to an audiobook, I'll put it this way, it was on my click wheel iPod.
Oh, it's been a bit. Yeah. Okay. What, 15 years? Jeez.
Yeah, so maybe I'll give it a go with these newfangled devices.
And what's great about the audiobooks that you'll download nowadays is that they're not abridged. Most audiobooks back in those days were like made for CDs, so they were abridged into 2 to 4 hour chunks. Where now you'll get the full book this time. And the Star Wars books are kind of just like built to be listened to. It's really cool. I know you don't have a long commute, but something to play with. But all right, guys, we're almost 30 minutes into this discussion. We haven't even talked about Miyazaki or the
We're
boy in the
catching
Heron.
up, man. It's been 2 weeks.
I know it's been a while. I'm sorry.
2 weeks abridged.
It's been 3 weeks since we spoke. We missed 2 weeks.
Yes, we missed 2 weeks on release, but yeah, it's been 3 weeks since we recorded. But yes, the boy and the heron.
Yeah. All right.
Ready.
So, for those of you who are listening who have not either watched The Boy and the Heron or know who Hayao Miyazaki is, brief rundown. He is probably the greatest name in anime filmmaking. Period. Like full stop. I don't think there is really any debate as to who the greatest animator or director in terms of anime there is. There are other great directors out there. There's another Studio Ghibli co-founder named Isao Takahata who has made some fantastic films, but none have really struck the popular subconscious quite like Hayao Miyazaki's work. Yeah, so this is an interesting movie because one of our podcast hosts has never seen a Hayao Miyazaki film, and two, it's easily, like bar none, his most inaccessible entry point. So I'm really excited to hear what we thought about it. But other
Dakota, are you calling me out for not watching Miyazaki, man? Like, what is up with that?
No, I'm talking about Rich here. I'm talking about the guy laughing in the corner back there.
Yeah, we've covered 2 of his movies already.
Yeah, so if you guys have not like gone back in our catalog, we've done what did we do? We did Princess Mononoke, right?
And Castle in the Sky.
Yes. Princess Mononoke was my previous favorite of his movies. Like it's like at some point in my lifetime, that was like the movie that just like blew my mind when I was a kid. And The Castle in the Sky was never that movie for me, but it's still a fantastic film, and it's just such a joy to revisit whenever we do. So this is an interesting one because I watched it in theaters and you watched it in theaters, Anthony, and we planned to do a show the following week after that had come out. But we both kind of realized, like, I don't know what to say about this movie, and we were just like, maybe we should do something more like easy to digest or whatever. But now that we have a third party on and we're able to revisit the film at our leisure, it's streaming on Max currently. You faithful listeners are now privileged to hear our discussion of The Boy and the Heron, the latest film of Hayao Miyazaki.
A year in the making.
A year in the making. Before we touch on Rich, no, actually, let's talk. Let's head straight to Rich. What are your thoughts?
Throw him in the pool.
Yeah, we're gonna throw you in the deep
end.
What are your thoughts going into this movie, like prior to having seen it, and what are your thoughts after having seen it? I don't know if you've rewatched it at all, or if it's just a one-time viewing.
I had to rewatch it. All right. Okay, so I mean, like, just over going into it, I had no background, none whatsoever. I had no idea. I hate to say it. I heard you guys just say his name, and I still think that if you held a gun to my head and you gave me four choices, I would probably still get it wrong.
That's fine.
So I had no previous knowledge going into it. Nothing. I had seen posters or images of the movies, like Totoro, right? I had seen that stuff somewhere, it's somewhere in my mind, but I had nothing going into it. So,
I mean, if you've been to New York Comic Con at all,
Yeah.
you've seen that imagery in passing.
that's
somehow.
what it
Like,
is. I mean,
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to have seen, at least Totoro. Yeah.
He's probably seen Totoro. There's usually a no face walking around
Yeah,
from Spirited Away.
you'll have probably seen imagery from Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right, go on.
So
Sorry.
I had no idea what I was getting into, and I had been planning to watch it with my family, and I'm kind of a jerk, so I knew I was going to want to watch it more than once. So I started watching it. I was 25 minutes in, and my wife comes down and she's aghast that I would be such a traitorous person. But I looked at her and she's like, "You're watching it without us." And I said, "I can only tell you what I've seen so far, but I'm going to have to watch this numerous times before I sit down and talk about it." I don't even.
And that's before it gets crazy. That's before it gets crazy.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of like a movie. I'm trying to think of a trilogy movie or something. But like the least inviting entry point, right? It's like, I don't know, just watching randomly Attack of the Clones. But I don't even think that's that bad. Like, I'm trying to think of what movie you would have to like sit down and go like, you would know nothing and just be like super confused because. So also it was just,
it would have to be like a finale of a TV series or something.
and it's my own. I have to admit this openly, right? Like, I don't watch a lot of anime. What I see is, I've seen Naruto. I remember watching Dragon Ball Z, things like that. So, my son's watching some like kind of more, I would say less mainstream ones as well. Maybe they're not. I don't know, Black Cloud or something, and a couple of other things that he really enjoys.
Black Clover.
Black Clover. Yeah. See, I can't even remember the names. All right. So I had a very specific idea of what anime meant as I went into this movie, and that's what I kind of expected. And I was like, whoa, this is not that at all. Like, it has some similarities, but that opening sequence, or not the opening, but when he's running through the flames, I had never seen any kind of artwork like that. I had never heard the way he was muffling the sound. It took me it sounds so lame. It took me like a sensory overload where I was noticing things and it was playing with the medium that I was engaging with in a way that I don't think anything else I've done before, watched before has. So it was gripping and interesting, but perplexing, and at times made me feel stupid. Like, there were times where I was like, I don't know what is happening. I always like to establish the reality of the fantasy world, right? Like, it's like when I teach Macbeth, I say, guys, Banquo saw the witches, so now we all have to accept that they're real because two people saw them, not just one, right? And I was trying to kind of get the foothold in, like, is this an imagination for him? Oh, wait,
Right.
no.
It's a shared imagination.
Yeah, it was just, and then I don't know if I want to, like.
Yeah, it's interesting. Did Alice really, fall down that rabbit hole? Did she?
Yeah.
There's no one to like back that up. But, in this case, there are individuals to back that up.
Like, you usually have like even the little kind of trope of like, oh, here's the one relic, type of thing that you have going on in a lot of other stories that are like this. But you didn't even really have that. I mean, he does at the end. And then you do have the little bit of a trope where at the end he's told like, oh, you'll forget that in time kind of thing.
The Narnia, like your kids will grow up.
Yeah. One thing that I'm not sure if I'm upset with you guys or I appreciate. No, so I didn't look at the movie. I didn't look at casting. Nothing. I have no idea going in. Okay, and I was actually angry with myself when I finished the movie, and I go, Dave Bautista, Willem Dafoe, what's
Robert
his
Pattinson,
name? And then
Christian
I saw
Bale. Dude, it was a stacked cast.
And then I'm like,
Florence.
wait, I'm like Pattinson, and then I go and I'm like, oh well, Willem Dafoe's obviously the Heron, right? And it's like, nope, that was Patterson. What? My mind exploded.
It sounds like Willem Dafoe. Like he did like a really good job. I was like, dude, I looked up the casting afterwards, and I was like, wait a second, huh?
Like, why did Willem Dafoe just go? He would have been like, so why am I here?
And that's a very much so like the type of character he would play.
Yes.
Like something creepy like that, you know?
I too find myself to be something of a director. You know, like he just takes over doing that. Like it was so mind blowing, and I didn't know that this guy had this star. Again, I had no idea, so I didn't even think. I've known Dave Bautista's voice since I was a wee lad going to WWE events, making signs. You know, like flying halfway across the country to sit in the last row to see Batista in the main event, and not recognizing him.
To me, his voice is the most recognizable.
I should have. It's really upsetting to me. I think it's because like literally I felt like I was in a different I was so turned around, right, by everything that was going on in the movie and trying to kind of pin it down. I mean, because by the time he shows up, I mean, what I'm like, King of the Parakeets, what's happening here?
Right. So I want to touch on one thing that you mentioned early on in the film, specifically about the art style when he's running to the hospital.
Whoa.
It's beautiful, it's crazy, and it's a sensory overload, and I think that's exactly what, you know, is trying to be portrayed. So a number of things are really interesting that you can kind of trace across Miyazaki's filmography, where he has a deep-seated need to express who he is and what made him who he is to his audience. He's done that visual of, cities on fire before. He's done that visual of he's done like a number of films with like mothers in sick beds. He's done a number of films where the father is creating, wartime like components and stuff like that. And this is all because he lived through that. His mother was sick in a hospital for most of his childhood. So when you watch stuff like My Neighbor Totoro and the mother is sick throughout that entire movie, that's an extension of, his own life. When you see the city being bombed and the streets burning in in Howl's Moving Castle, or this film, The Boy and the Heron, it's an extension of like the air raids that he experienced living in Japan during World War II. His father was like literally he owned a factory called I think it was like Miyazaki Parts or something like that, where they made like key components for some of the airships that the Japanese used. And he dedicated an entire film to that, which was The Wind Rises. And that whole movie is basically like him regretting the path that Japan went down during that time in history. So kind of all of that kind of coalesced right there at the beginning of this movie, and I felt like that was like I feel bad for him, because it's something that he can't shake. It's something that he can't like get out of his system. He needs to keep making stuff to express that emotion so that the audience can feel it, And I think the whole film is kind of like that. If you, I've studied Miyazaki's work like a lot. I've made several videos about it. So I really, this is a tough film for me to like discuss, because I don't fully understand it, but I can understand parts of it, or I can interpret the art as best as I can, especially near the end. There's a couple like themes and stuff that like play around, that he plays around with, like a successor to, you know, creation, or
which was Mark Hamill.
yes. So the great grand uncle was Mark Hamill. Yeah. So it's stuff like that. Like there's a whole bunch of like themes and little ideas that he sprinkles into the mix in this movie that you can kind of like piece apart and like kind of push into his life or his mindset as a creator and try to like understand what he's trying to say. But yeah, if you don't know Miyazaki or have never experienced any of his other works, I wonder if you can get anything out of it at all. Like and that's why we have a guinea pig on the podcast.
And now
Rich is definitely the guinea pig.
I didn't look this up. You know, I figured I would just wait to ask you guys, right? So his new mom is his mom's sister.
Yes.
Is this a common practice? Because time period wise, I'm putting us in World War II.
Yeah, it's
oh yeah, it's 100% right? World War II.
Right,
yeah.
So that's the end of the war they're talking about. So then, to me, it's. I mean, I don't. Again, it's just my lack of knowledge, right? But would have that been a was that a common practice? Were they romantic?
I don't know. I can't say whether that is common or uncommon. I think in the film it plays on the idea that this is not normal for him, for the boy, basically. Like I feel like he really can't get into the idea of this being his mother until he has to save her, basically, near the end of the film. You know, that's when he first calls him mother or mom, whatever.
There's always like that. There's always a struggle when it comes to there being a step parent. But like, I can imagine being even more conflicted when that's your aunt.
Yeah. And it also like it kind of, it's a weird dynamic because the mother and sister clearly weren't very close because the main character had only supposedly met the aunt once, like when he was a baby,
right?
Prior to her essentially being her, full on mother, and by that time his father had already sired another child with this other woman, so we don't really know the timeline as far as like, was he having an affair while the mother was in the hospital, the real mother was in the hospital, or if this was, like in that year gap after the mom died in the fire and, so on. Yeah, I don't know. But I think we're led to the assumption that this is not a normal thing. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, it didn't. I picked up on that too. I also liked that you brought up Miyazaki's his family past about his father having a factory that created components for aircraft. Well, that was the instance in this film. That's what the main character's father was in this film.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
He owned a factory. You could see the domes for the cockpits and stuff. And so I always thought that was interesting. But yeah,
which is a really cool visual too, like them putting like these new like state of the art like cockpit domes into this, ancient Japanese home. I just think it's such a cool visual.
Yeah. But yeah, Rich, that this will be like a common element that you'll see throughout his films. Like if you watch more of his films, is that World War II had a huge impact on him. Huge.
Yeah, so he was a boy during World War II, and like speaking about like the air raids that went through basically every city throughout all of Japan except for I think Kyoto. He said that he remembers the air raids. He can still see his street burning. Like that's something like as a kid that was just like I think it torments him inside. Like I think that visual. And what was interesting about like that particular scene in the beginning where he's running through the fire, I can imagine, during wartime where you're just doing something and it just becomes a dream state. You're not actively seeing what's around you. Everything's a blur. Everything is muffled. You're not actively, experiencing any one thing, but everything all at once. And I think that's what he was trying to visualize, and I think it was so cool. I don't know.
It reminded me. It's not. It doesn't. It's not even visually the same. But it just reminded me of the when Daenerys is attacking King's Landing in Game of Thrones, and just kind of the outright devastation of the fire. You know, because I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm not sure if this is. I have you know, I've always enjoyed a nice fire. You know, like. I don't know. I grew up in Queens.
I like
right?
a nice fire.
I grew up in Queens, and like as a Queens city boy, like the idea of, you know, like a campfire was always like cool. I never went camping. I wasn't a Boy Scout, so, you know, during pandemic, like getting the solo stove was like super awesome. You know, like I've always kind of liked it in that way. But there's also the absolutely horrific, scary, quick moving nature of fire and destructive force that could just leave everything just torn asunder in its wake. That I think that scene captured so well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And actually, you know, that also reminds me of his movie Howl's Moving Castle. There's a literal character that's literally a hearth fire, and you know, like it's such a fragile thing, but it can become extremely dangerous. You know, like if it goes out, then the fire's dead. If, you know, left unattended, it could be a huge issue. You know, like it's a fascinating concept. But yeah, Anthony, what are your thoughts on the movie overall?
It definitely is an interesting film, and it is fair to say that it is not one of his more accessible ones. There are he has ones that are very much so easier to like watch for like younger kids, like my neighbor Totoro, or Ponyo, or Kiki's Delivery Service. But this one is it's definitely a tough one, and I don't mean that in a way that it's a bad movie, but it's tough because there is a lot going on, and I feel like there's aspects of this movie that only Miyazaki understands. I don't think that you could fully understand everything. I feel like you could maybe get close to understanding, and I'm pretty sure that there's people who could analyze this and really like pick out a lot. But even then, at the end of the day, I feel like Miyazaki has like the true idea of like what he was trying to put. Maybe, you know, sometimes, you know, like maybe he was
true
like
grasp of like what the actual intent of the message is. There's quite a lot of really fascinating ideas, and
right, because he goes to like the upside down, but instead of it being a decrepit place, it's like a whole other world, you know?
Yeah, it's there's a whole lot going on. There's certain themes that like I found really engaging, but I also don't think I fully understand. So the great grand uncle is something that I spent a lot of time trying to understand. And I think in some ways the main character, the boy, and the grand uncle are both Miyazaki, you know, in different respects. You know, I think he sees himself in both characters. And, you know, Miyazaki is quite old, you know, like I think he's at least late 70s, early 80s, you know, like he's at the end of his career as an animator. But
yeah, we'll see.
Well, yeah, we'll see. He also said that he wants to make another movie, so we'll see how that goes. But homeboy's like crazy. What I find interesting is that like the grand uncle is eager to find a successor to keep the creativity alive, and I think that is basically like the real world conundrum that Miyazaki has. You know, like he's created these worlds, he's created these fictional realities. You know, a lot of this feels very akin to some of the weirder spots in Totoro or Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke. You know, like it all kind of has that feel. But with this particular ending, he has a character who's been doing this for a very long time. He's been doing this as long as he can remember, and he's waiting for someone to pick up the torch where he can no longer take it, basically. And I think by the end of it, the message that I took is that, Miyazaki is going to die one day. Hayao Miyazaki is going to die one day. There will be no clear successor because everyone has their own way of doing things, You can't expect someone to create stuff like him moving forward, like Studio Ghibli, the studio that he co-created with the other director, Isao Takahata. They each director had different styles, but it kind of shifted into Miyazaki's thing when Takahata died a couple decades ago, and yeah, there's really no other studio making movies quite like this, and I think that the intent here is basically to tell people that good things come to an end. And that's kind of morbid. It's kind of messed up, but it's also like a beautiful thing because like he created so many fantastic works throughout his career. And yeah, I'm sorry, Rich, this is an extremely introspective and metatextual discussion of Miyazaki's like career and like motives in this movie, but
that helps me. It honestly makes me feel better because I literally like one of the reasons why I said I felt like I was watching the second movie in a trilogy was I usually am able to kind of
pick up something,
figure out the plot. Like I teach English, it's kind of my job, and there was a lot going on, where I mean we, as I watched it, my family, we were all at different points, like what's going on, and then we just I think we just stopped asking what's going on, and we just enjoyed the roller coaster ride.
Yeah,
that I feel like that's the case with a lot of anime, especially Miyazaki movies. Like you just have to go for the ride.
There's a certain logic that you have to throw out of the window and just experience the artistry and the story unfold as it does. As far as the story goes with this movie, it's a lot more difficult to follow than even some of the like more weird films like Spirited Away. It's interesting.
Right. And like this one has like some kind of time bending mechanics to it also, where the main character, he meets his mother when she's younger and she's from this place too, and when they towards the end they go back to their real worlds. I'm thinking that each of those doors are different points in time, and the mother has to go into this time to become the mother of Makoto? Mahito, yeah.
Good one, Rich, because I forgot it too.
Yeah, there's just so much going on, but yeah, I do like what you said about Mahito and the grand uncle being the same person, because I could totally see that. It's like it was almost like Miyazaki's like looking back on his life, and like you said, there not being a clear successor, but yeah, like if there was gonna be a last film, I feel like this would have been the perfect one to top it off. But he can't help himself. We're on the 11th last film of his life, and
yeah,
I don't think he's gonna stop making movies until he dies.
12? I think this is either 11 or 12 of his like movies. How many films?
There's 13 for some reason.
Is it 13? Miyazaki made 12 feature films.
Oh, just missed it.
Yeah.
So this is like, because he said it a while back. I think that like it's been at least 2 to 3 films since he said that he's not doing it anymore.
Yeah. So that's like something that like
it's a running joke.
I don't know if it's a running joke, but like he goes into retirement, he gets all crotchety. He's just like, I'm too old to make something anymore. I don't have the stamina. And then he just like, you know what? I have something to say. And then he makes a movie. And it takes him years, you know? Like, this is all hand-drawn. You don't have hand-drawn animation anymore. Even, like, some of the newer anime that comes out is mostly made on, like, computers, you know? Like,
it's digital art.
like Makoto Shinkai. Before the show, you were mentioning Suzume to me, which is another film by... it's a fantastic film. We covered it, actually, a couple months back, you and I, Anthony. Suzume, and that director Makoto Shinkai kind of pioneered a new technique where it's mostly done in Photoshop. You know, like he puts digital drawings into Photoshop and just continues to make layers and layers and layers, and it's a really cool technique. But you know, Miyazaki is like part of a dying breed where hand-drawn animation isn't a thing anymore. Disney doesn't do it. You know, you really only have to go to like cartoons like on TV for that, you know, like that's really the only real hand-drawn stuff that we see in mainstream media at this point. But yeah, it's cool, man. I love this guy.
You bring up Suzume. It's as I was prepping for the episode, I asked my 10-year-old son, you know, what he thought, and you know, because I thought he'd have a discerning eye, he'd have a little bit more to say, and I mean, God bless him, he's like, well, you know, it really reminded me of Suzume, and the way the ending and the doors and the different you know, kind of realities, and I'm just sitting there like in awe, right? Because my son I think made much more meaning of that movie than I did on the first go through, and I think it's because he's more, I think, accustomed to just giving up and going into and just falling down kind of the rabbit hole and enjoying the artistry, where you know, it's like if a movie is a sandbox game, I try to go to the edge. I'm like, okay, is that the border? Like, where's the border? I try to find out the rules first before I kind of dive in, you know? So,
this movie is the edge.
Yeah.
But like, you know, kind of in a way that we say that World War II and a lot of life events influences a lot of the Miyazaki films. It's the same thing with Makoto Shinkai. Suzume was definitely a piece on the 2011 earthquake and tsunami.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Yeah, so like, I mean, he kind of
and to be.
I wonder
honest,
if he wasn't.
I think that, you know, like, you know, going further than that, you can say the exact same thing about his other films, Your Name and Weathering with You. They both have natural disaster type things that affect the major part of the plot.
Yeah,
Rich, if you want to watch a great, absolutely top tier anime movie that you will 100% get by the end of the movie, I highly recommend Your Name by Makoto Shinkai. No, I'm serious. You'll get it.
No, you're right. I love how like you're just like, you will 100% know what's going on by the end, because I mean, it's funny how you leave this movie, The Boy and the Heron, still trying to figure out what just happened.
Oh yeah, dude, there's so much symbolism in Boy and the Heron, and I can go on for days like what I think everything means. Like, I think the king of the parakeets is kind of like being cynical about world leaders and like how they try to fix things. And you know, like you see at the end the parakeet king, you know, try to like make a bunch of blocks sit upright, and he's just like, why are you giving you know, why are we doing this, or why are we letting this random dude do it? Why can't I just do it? And then it all falls to pieces. And it kind of reminds me of like how, you know, humans can't really run things in the well, I should say. Humans can't run things well, and everything they touch kind of just falls to pieces. And especially when there's corruption, and there's clear corruption with the parakeet guy. And, you know, prior to that, the grand uncle said something along the lines of like, you know, these stones haven't been touched by evil yet, or malice. And as soon as they were touched by malice, everything falls apart. So yeah. It's a really, there's so many layers to this that like you could get into and like actually dissect. But I think I'm gonna end my particular thoughts on this with a quote from David Lynch I just pulled up. He goes, "I don't know why people expect art to make sense. They accept the fact that life doesn't make sense." And it's a really good point, because his films don't make sense, and
I like how you circled back to David Lynch.
I have to, man,
because you literally made that comparison when we're talking about recording this movie.
Yeah. What's great about David Lynch is that the way that he creates movies, he's I've read his book, and the way he creates movies is he writes down on post-it notes, or not post-it notes, but little just
Index cards.
Yeah. He writes down 90 different random scenes that have nothing to do with one another, and just pulls it all together, and that's his movie. He literally, dude is he was an actual crazy man. It was
Cards
either
Against Humanity, the movie.
it was either he was a homeless man on the streets, or one of the greatest directors of all time. There was no in between for him.
He was both.
He was. I don't think he was homeless, but yeah. But that's kind of the vibe that I get with this movie, is that it's just scenes that happen. It's thoughts that come forth, and it follows dream logic. There's a couple threads that kind of weave throughout the entire thing, but for the most part, you're jumping into sections of dreams. And it's almost dream state, where oh man, you gotta run away from all of these birds, and then you're on a ship with floating blobs of future babies. I have no idea.
Future babies, yeah.
And then you're back to running from birds who want to eat you now. So it's very dreamlike, and I think that's what Miyazaki's going for.
And it kind of reminds me, I'm pretty sure that everybody has had this. I know that people with ADD know exactly what I'm about to say, but sometimes you have random thoughts, and sometimes those thoughts don't connect, and you're like, how did this thought get from this thought? And it's almost like what this movie is.
The worst thing with
thoughts.
ADD or ADHD is you're going to look for something, you go to another room, and you start doing something else, and you just, what did I come here for? What am I looking for? And
There's
Rich, does your son have a cell phone?
No, he has
not yet. Okay,
he has a iPad.
Okay, but you can't text him right now and ask him if he's seen your name.
No, no, I'll have to. I think he's probably.
Oh, it's probably late.
He's probably abed. But he does have. I didn't set it up, so he does. I can text him. So we can amazingly will text each other in the house. But he actually can text me if he's home. He can text me when I'm at work using iMessage.
All right. Yeah, I'm really curious if he's seen Your Name, and if he hasn't, it's a really good film that you guys should check out. It's awesome. Yeah.
He's gonna be excited.
When Dakota says that it's really good, it's
a top 5
even
film
I
for
was
me. Just not just anime. It's a top 5 film for me.
I was blown away. I was super excited, especially when we covered it. It has you on the edge of your seat. You're super excited about what's happening. You're oh my gosh, you there's jaw dropping moments. It's a really good movie that, yeah, like you said, it's a top tier movie. Yeah, it's an anime film, but it checks so many boxes off to make it a top tier, just whether it's anime or live action. It's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just rank it. Is it better or equal to Little Giants? Because I love Little Giants. So if you guys say it's as fun as Little Giants.
For you, I will say equal.
Oh, all right. Listen, I'm excited because boy, do I love that annexation of Puerto Rico, baby. Here we come.
All right. Yeah. Guys, what are we covering next week? I literally have no idea. We have not discussed this at all off the pod. So.
We have not. I mean, we've been so focused on.
Oh, Anthony, you started watching Dragon Prince.
Yes, I need to continue.
Would you be interested in covering the first season of Dragon Prince? It's short enough where we don't have to break it up into 2 episodes.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that.
All right, Rich,
We
you cool with that?
Yeah.
So
Richie Rich.
the Dragon Prince is a Netflix animated series. It's American animation, and it's more computer animated than hand drawn or anything like that. But it has that 2D
cool.
aspect to it.
Yeah. Oh, what did I forget to? You know what really made me angry about the movie? I mean, we don't. You can cut this
Yeah,
out.
no, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, listen, man. Like, why are the subtitles not the same as what they say?
Oh, I'll tell you why.
Oh, I know exactly why.
It's because the subtitles are direct translations of the Japanese, whereas the actual dub over in English is tailored to an American audience.
Oh, okay.
So it's more colloquially friendly in like English.
Got you. Because I
had to turn it off too. I had to turn off the subtitles.
Okay. All right. So yeah.
It gets confusing like that, and I know that like a lot of and the way that those English subtitles are situated, a lot of the Asian speaking countries learn like England English,
Right.
Yeah.
so it's set up in that kind of way. Although like I have spoken to a few, and they say that they prefer to learn American English because we have a lot less rules. They said our English is super like lax.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I like that. That's cool. All right, guys. Next
Chill.
week for episode 110, we're gonna be covering
Rubitar, as I call it.
Yeah, Rubitar. It's kind of like Avatar and Ruby, RWBY. Yeah, so we will be covering the Dragon Prince season 1. We're not going to be breaking this into 2 episodes. We can watch the entirety in probably the same amount of time as like a long movie. So I think that's what we're going to do. And if we, I think there's 7 seasons. We don't need to do them all at once, basically. But yeah, so that's
Agreed.
That's where we're at right now. We're all in agreement for Dragon Prince next week.
I'm down.
Season
Flame
1.
on.
All right.
Season 1.
Thank you guys so much for listening to us here for our 109th episode of Project Geekology. If you want to check out any of our socials, please be sure to check out the show notes down below. You can find us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram. And I think we haven't actually been putting Rich in the show notes, and I feel like it's about time that we finally start doing that. So we're probably going to have to go back and start putting Rich in the show notes so you can follow him on wherever he's popping off online. But yeah, thanks guys.
So that you can see who let the Mets out,
Yeah.
Oh man, Pete Alonso's back, baby! Yeah. All right. Sorry.
Also, we require our listeners to give us something that we enjoy. We enjoy these just imagine this fat juicy 5-star rating, and just put it on there.
We're recording this over Zoom. And like Anthony has his hands in a position where it's like
it's like a burger.
He's picturing like the juiciest, fattest burger you can ever imagine.
Dude, I literally was in my mind, I was starting to get hungry. As I was imagining this, I'm like, dude, I want
guys,
a burger
we need
now.
that 5-star review. It has to be juicy. If you want to leave a review on top of that, please feel free if your podcast app allows it. Thanks, guys. On to the next one. The Wolverine.
Dude, that's what we're waiting for.